And what does it look like? You said that you thought you were whole, but he brought a whole nother level of healing. How did you do that? What does it look like? And that you can answer this too. What does it look like to offer a space that is healing, where someone's insecurities or their flaws comes out, and it's a space where they're not just criticized, but that is a space of healing? Like, how did y'all create that for each other?
So honestly, I think that me being able to offer that to her came from my own healing. It came from my own experiences, and not having someone that I could feel like I can be open. I can allow myself to pour out to someone. And so, like, from my past relationships, like, I tried to enter into a relationship while I was broken. And that broke me further, because like those pieces had nothing to hold up against. There was no structure there. Wow. And so when I finally did that healing and realized that about myself, and realized that the areas in which I needed to grow, and the areas in which I needed to become whole, I went through that process with God.
Yeah.
And the way that God held me while I was going through that, I was like, now I see how you treated me. Let me allow myself to treat my wife like that. Let me do that for my wife. Let me that she can come to, and she can open up, she can pour out to me, and not be judgmental, and not be like, well, you just need to do this, or well, what you do that for. Be like I know that these areas are places that you're still working on, and that you're still growing, and I'm not judging you for still feeling this way. Like, I don't think of myself as, once you got married to me, like everything's all good. You don't worry about that no more. I understand that there are some areas that still need some healing, and there were areas where I still needed healing, and I would allow myself to open up to her in turn, and she would be that place that I could be like, I'm vulnerable right now. And so that is something that was very important to me, to be able to offer to her, and to be able to receive from her as well.
Yeah. And I know, like, so on a different side of that, for me, one of the things that pushed me the furthest, and I think had a breakthrough, and which is one of the things that you're in a godly marriage that can be so revolutionary, is that it taught me. So, like, when you're single, you know, you have inner reflections and things like that, but it's pretty much you in a vacuum, right? You're not put in situations where you have to test. You know, it's like with the cup illustration. You know, you can sit there and put the pieces together, and you can be like, yeah, it's completely together, but then once you touch it, put any pressure on it, it falls completely apart. And there, girl, situation that puts
hold on. Y'all can't say you gotta run that back. You talking about a cup that got cracks in it, broken pieces, but it's held together. But there's no pressure on it, so you can't fully tell until you touch it, and it falls apart. Ooh. Yeah. Like, let's examine ourselves and make sure we're not broken cups that just don't have no pressure on it. Ooh.
Exactly. But the thing, that's God's plan for us. Like, God, in His love for us, wants to put us in situations to put pressure on it, so that we can be stronger. And so, I know in my singleness, I was that cup that I thought was completely together, and the Lord loved me to put these pieces back together. But He was like, okay, now it's time. You could pass level 1, time to go to level 2. Let's see how you really are. And it requires a level of self-examination that I just never thought was possible. But also it requires you to actually trust your partner. And so that was one of the struggles we had at the beginning of our relationship, was that I struggled with trust. And I thought I was healed. But then when we're in a situation where I have a man who loves me, who is led by God, telling me something, and I'm being defensive, I'm coming at him, I'm trying to attack him, and I'm angry because you pointed this out about me. How dare you say this about me? And it made me realize, your teacup just fell apart, girl. You thought it was healed, but you really not. You really not. You have a man who loves who does the best for you, who wants to do the best for you, and he's trying to have you grow in this area. Do you really trust him? And if you do, why do you think he's your enemy? He's not. He's a partner. He's on the same side. And so it really does put a whole nother level of having to grow and having to do inward reflection and things that I just had no idea that I had issues with.
And she's not the only one that was like experiencing that, because like there would be areas where I thought I was healed, and then she would say something, and then I get upset about it, and I'm like, why'd you do that? Like, why am I expressing myself this way? Like,
but hold on, why are you expressing yourself that way? And that's what I'm saying. That's so different when you're single. Like when you're single, you don't have to really ask yourself that question. But like when you're married, you're like, and you should, but you don't have to, right? As a single person, you should be asking, why am I responding this way? But you're not in a situation where you actually really have to reevaluate. You're not a person like, why are you so upset right now? And you're not in a situation where you're living with this person 24/7, so you can't pop off and just walk away. It's like, okay, I'm walking into the next room and you're there too. So it's like it forces you to be like, okay, I have to do evaluation on something that I typically would not. Like typically I would just be like, I'm just having a bad day, brush it off.
Right.
The Lord hell. Right. But it's like, no, I have to now come to this person because he's asking me, why are you upset? And I have to sit here in a situation where normally I would not have to, and sit down and be like, why am I upset right now? And I actually have to do the emotional work of decompacting that. Like, and you just don't have to when you're, you just don't have to, even when you're dating. Like, you really don't have to. Just like, oh, whatever, and I'm going to go home. But when you're married, you're literally like, I'm sitting there staring at you. You're waiting on me to answer you. And so now I have to sit here. There have been so many, I've been so frustrated. I'm just so mad. I'm like, I don't feel like thinking about this right now, that I have to think about it because I know I'm just tripping. But I'm tripping. I'm irritated with him. He hasn't really done anything. Now I have to see.
Okay, are we back? Are we back?
Yeah.
Hey, we back, and we back, and we back. Okay. Listen, the devil thought he had us, okay?
Look.
But to that point about like also not having to do that self-work when you're single, but it being a good thing. Like I've been trying to practice even doing that with my friendships. Like when I've gotten into it with friends, trying to notice, okay, how am I communicating? Like, am I being avoidant? Am I making assumptions? Am I being defensive? Okay, they were wrong for coming at me like that, but am I being overly defensive of myself and yada yada? You know, like I'm trying to take notice of those things because I'm like, if this is coming up in my friendships, then it's probably gonna come up in a relationship. So I might as well try to deal with it now and don't just leave it unaddressed just because this isn't as intimate of a relationship or the stakes aren't as high. It's still a me issue and I need to address it, you know, for me, you know what I mean? Let alone for the fact that I expect to be in a more serious and intimate relationship one day. Because leaving that stuff unaddressed, I can only imagine how that can hurt the health of a relationship. Like imagine if you didn't stop to look at why am I responding that way, then you just keep responding that way. And now you're shutting that person out, or you're making that your partner feel like they can't be honest with you, or they can't point out to you areas of growth because you're going to get defensive, or you're going to assume, or you're going to blow up at them. Like it creates walls. And so it's like we have to deal with ourselves and we have to deal with our brokenness so that we can actually, you know, thrive together, you know?
Right.
So that's real. That's good. I want to switch to a topic that I always wonder about when it comes to marriage, especially like Christian marriage, especially as a strong, capable, intelligent Black woman who identifies as a leader. How do y'all deal with gender roles and submission and the question of submission?
So I'm going to handle the submission. Gender roles?
I can talk about gender roles. Okay, so as far as gender roles go, like we really don't play into the gender roles per se, like as in like I feel obligated as a man or I feel obligated as a woman to do these kind of things. It's more so like for us, we play our roles, the roles that we are meant to play. And so it's like, what areas are you strong in? Okay, that's your role that you're going to play in this relationship. And so that's the way that we decide to handle our relationship. So I don't really think of it as like I'm the man, so I'm gonna be working and providing always. Like, I do provide in our relationship, but it's not primarily because like that's what the man's supposed to do. It's because that's the role that I'm playing right now. Like, she's in law school and I'm the one working. So if we were to decide to switch that, I don't have a problem with us switching those roles, because that's what we decide with for our relationship.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Yeah, we operate in our roles because it's what we like to do, not because we feel obligated.
Yeah. I mean, I personally like that. I know everybody has a different opinion on it, but I like the idea of playing to your strengths and not just feeling like you have to do the thing because of, like, especially when they always want to talk about women cooking and stuff. Like, I'm working on my cooking skills and everything, but if I happen to come up on a man that loves to cook, baby, you can cook. Okay? Like, I don't have a problem. Like, and like, I'm a career woman. Like, I'm not about to be up here being a housewife. Like, listen, I can be a housewife if I have a baby and I want to have a year at home. Like, that's one thing. But I'm not about to act like I'm just going to be a housewife just because I'm a woman. I have goals. I have a brain. I have leadership capabilities. I want to, like, you know what I mean? Like, so what does it mean for me to say that the man is the provider? I'm going to be making money. We both going to be making money. We're going to be a 2-income household. You can barely get by on one income sometimes these days. Anyway, it's not that you can't, but like, honestly, you would probably be better off with both of us breaking it up. You know what I mean? And so
teamwork
makes the dream work. But what you said is we decide our roles as a partnership. Like, it's what we decide. And I love that idea of like a partnership and really coming together and saying, what do we both bring to the table? And like letting that be a guide of how you work together, like a team. Because that's what a relationship is a team.
It's a team. It's a partnership.
It is a partnership. Yeah.
So about submission.
Talk to me about submission, sis. Because I feel like me and you are similar, so I want to hear.
Yeah, so that was something that was really hard for me. The idea of it. And I think it was because the way in which a lot of Christians talk about it is not, in my opinion, is not biblical.
It's not what? Biblical?
It's not biblical.
All right, speak to us.
We have a corrupted sense of submission. The submission that we think about or try to push is that as a wife, you're supposed to be all mealy-mouthed, and what your husband says goes, and if he says this, then, you know, he can choose whether to listen to you or not, and he can do his own thing, and you're supposed to do all, and it's just, I don't think that's a biblical representation of submission. When you read through the entire chapter of Ephesians, it talks about husbands submitting to their wives and wives submitting to their husbands. The caveat is that for him, it's as unto the Lord. So he has a different level of responsibility in front of God for our household, right? So it's the difference of, I mean, I don't want to go to like my lawyer speak, but when you it's like vicarious liability.
I don't understand that. I haven't been to law school since. You don't have to.
I'll break it down. I know.
Break it down.
Liability is a type of liability that we impose on employers. So if your employee does something within the scope of employment, you know, during the hours of employment, and while during the pursuit of their job, you can be liable as an employee. No questions asked. If those certain elements are met, you will be liable as an employee. And so that's the same thing with him. He has vicarious liability for our household. So the level of responsibility, because the Bible gives him, like, somebody, like, if you have, you know, you think about structure, somebody has to be the head. Someone has to make the final decision. Someone has to step up into that role. And the Bible so happens to define him as that role. But what oftentimes is missed out is the level of responsibility. So if he is not submitting to me, if he is not loving me the way Christ loves the church, if he is not caring for me, if he is not being a priest of the home, the Lord is going to look at him and say, D, I gave you this responsibility and you failed. in a way that the Lord's not going to look at the same. And that's just how it is. And so that is what submission is. Submission is the recognizing that for him, he has a greater responsibility. I, as a wife, have to be flexible with him in helping him fulfill that responsibility.
Ooh.
And so,
I like that definition. I like that. No, that makes sense to me.
Yeah. And so what it looks like, what submission looks like, is saying, okay, you're the head of this household, but he at the same time recognizes, as a good leader, that I have a lot to bring to the table.
Okay.
And so in operating his responsibility and knowing the weight of his responsibility, he's like, I have to do this right. So let me pull on all the resources that I have. My wife being one of the primary and top and best resources that I have. And so what it looks like in our relationship is that he pulls on me in my areas of strength. So he knows, a good leader knows when to take the back seat. But he knows when it comes to organization, when it comes to administration, when it comes to taking notes, keeping receipts, making calls, doing budget things. I am a budget fanatic.
You got it down pat.
When it comes to paying bills and managing the budget and those types of things, that's my lead. And it's because he's like, this is your area of strength. It would be irresponsible for me to step into this role, knowing that that is not my strength. And that would bring damage to our household and it would bring damage to you. And so because of that, I am able to gladly submit to him because I know that one, he knows the weight of his responsibility. Two, he knows how to pull on his resources, primary resources being me. And he values me enough to include me and incorporate me in the leading of the household.
Come on. That's good. That's good. That's good. Recognizing the level of responsibility. Do you want to add to that? That's good.
I will add that that I see, especially if you look in social media, you look in the media in general, you have men who have this idea of, I'm the man, you're supposed to submit to me. But
don't earn the submission.
They don't exactly. They don't earn the submission. It's like if you want a woman to submit to you, you have to be a man that they are willing to submit to. You can't demand it off of the fact that you are a male. You can't just demand it off of the fact that she's a woman, you're a guy. So how it's supposed to happen. You have to be in a position to show her,
you're worthy of it.
Look at me. I'm worthy of your submission. I look at what I am doing. So that you want to submit to me. Like I remember early on in our relationship, she was talking to me about struggling with the idea of submitting to a man because of the way that I carry myself, the way that I treat her, that she's willing to submit to me, that she wants to because of the person that I am, because of the way that I am.
And I think what's missing from the narrative oftentimes is that the action is placed solely on the woman. And it fails to define the things that a man needs to do in order to be worthy of submission.
And that's
it is not my obligation to submit to a fool.
Okay.
It is not my biblical obligation. And my biblical obligation is to submit to a man who is submitted unto the Lord, who is loving me like Christ loves the church. And so if you are not working to earn my submission, if you're not making me feel safe, if you're not making me like you're being thoughtful of me, if I feel like you're not being a thoughtful, responsible human being in general, no, I have no obligation to submit to you. As a man, it is your responsibility to earn it. And to do that, you have to put in a lot of work. You have to grow as a human being. You need to, and that includes not just finances. You need to be emotionally secure. You need to be mentally secure. You need to be spiritually secure. And submission, in my mind, is not to require stupidity off of women. I don't think that's what the Bible is telling us to do. It's to submit to a man who is able to make us feel secure and who is following Christ. I'm not about to follow you off a cliff. I'm just not. And I don't think the Bible would require us to do that.
So what does it look like then? Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just finishing up. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, so what does it look like then if, D, you seem great. So I'm not saying that you're going to lead my sis off a cliff. But like, say he's off his game. Say you're not feeling like he's leading you in the right direction. Say you're not really feeling how he's leaning on a certain decision. What does that look like? How does it, like, I mean, I know you say that you don't have an obligation to follow someone off a cliff, but does it just be like, well, I'm not going? Is it just like how does, you know what I mean? How do you handle it when you disagree and when you really just see things differently as far as the direction for your family?
I think it depends, right? So I think it depends. If I feel like he is not being led by God, I have no obligation to follow him. Again, as he is submitting unto the Lord. So if he is not submitting unto the Lord, I have no obligation to follow him. So now that's that case. Now, if it is a disagreement in how to handle a particular situation, and I don't feel like he is, deviating from the path that God has for us, we talk about it until we come to a conclusion. That's what we do. We talk about it until we come to a conclusion.
Is the conclusion a consensus, or is the conclusion one person has to just like basically this is the example they always give of submission. If you can't agree, the man makes a decision. And I really struggle with that. Because I be right. Like, I be right a lot of times. And it's just like, so I could be right, but the final decision is yours because you're a man.
No, I think the final decision is, okay, so let's think about this. So for D and I, he respects my opinion enough to where if we disagree, we talk until we come to a consensus. We talk until we come to a compromise. We talk until, whatever. But we've been married for 6 months. And so I will tell you right now that I am of the belief that if it's at the end of the day, and it's something that we have to decide as a household, if we cannot come together in a consensus, I defer to him. And this is why. Because he carries the responsibility. I do not. And so it falls on him. So that is God's ingrained protection for women. To say, look, I know we have to have a hierarchy. We have to have some type of system to make this business run, to make this run well. Your reward for submission is that if he leads you astray,
it's on him. It's on him.
The blood is on his hands. If he leads you or the family astray, the blood is on his hand. And that's scary. I don't want that. I'll be honest. Like, I would hate to go to God and God's like, look, it was on you. I want to be able to be like, I really do. Because like, that's heavy. When you think about it, that's really heavy. Yeah. And and I'm not saying that we are absolved of all responsibility for our household, because we're also keepers of the home. Yeah. So that's our responsibility, right? I personally believe that like the atmosphere of your home, the peace, the feeling of your home, the emotional stability, everything I think that falls on women. I do. I think it falls on women and men, but I do think it weighs heavily on women. I do.
I've never heard that before. Tell me more.
So I feel like, so have you ever heard that saying like men are the head, but women are the neck that makes
my mama says that. My mama always said, I'm the neck that turns the head.
Exactly. And I think in God's fairness and justice that he doesn't put the complete weight on husbands. At the end of the day, with decisions and directions, yes, that is Dee's responsibility. But I still have responsibilities. I still have things that I have to account to God for. Yeah. And I think that includes our home.
No, that's real. That's solid.
I want to
go ahead.
When it comes down to responsibility and submission and the responsibility falling on the man, if you look all the way back to Adam and Eve, whenever whenever man fell in the garden.
Take us to church. Let me get my Bible.
Eve might have taken the first bite, but whenever God had came into the garden, he was like,
Adam, what's up?
What's up, man? Like, why have you sinned against me?
Right, and Adam was looking like, but it was the woman, and God was like,
but I told you, like, who did I give the command to? Like, he specifically gave that command to Adam. And it also said that, like, he gave, like, dominion over everything that was in the garden. And so whenever Adam held that responsibility, so that when Eve came into the garden, she was his responsibility as well.
I didn't think about that.
So whenever she sinned, it was it was still on his responsibility, because she came into essentially his household. Now,
that still happens. My dad gave me to him. I gave
he's in my household, and I'm responsible.
Oh, that actually brings up another topic that somebody suggested I ask y'all about, which is leaving and cleaving. So, you know, it says a man and woman shall leave their father and mother and cleave to their husband and wife. Have there been any challenges for y'all in the area of really stepping into what it means to be your own family and no longer being under your family of origin?
I don't think so for me, because I know that early on I was ready to be independent. Like, when I got to college, even whenever I was struggling, I was like, I'm not gonna ask my parents for money. Like, I'm gonna figure it out. So I had that sense of, I want to be independent. Like, I want to grow up and be able to do my thing and be on my own and own my own family and to go into. So I don't think that it was a struggle for me, because I know that there were times wherever Natalie and I were talking and one of my parents would call. If I see them calling and I know that me and Natalie are handling something, what we're handling comes first, and I can always call my parents back. And so I know that there are some people who are like, oh, hold on, like, my mama calling me, like, it's going away, or my daddy calling me, like, it's like, no, like, whenever you become the husband of your house, that is your house, and it's y'all. Like, your parents can help, they can like offer advice, but ultimately anything that you do is up to you. It's up to you and your wife, your significant other. Like, that's y'all's family. And so now that you have started your family, you're not supposed to be holding on to your parents, or holding on to where you came from. You had to move forward.
That's real.
I will say that does not mean that we don't rely on our parents for wisdom. And I think we both have an understanding. So we don't take it to the extreme that, like, y'all stay over there.
Right.
We believe that the wisdom of those who have come before us is valuable.
Yes.
And so both of us pull on each other's parents for, hey, what are your thoughts about this?
Yeah.
You know, do you know anything about X, Y, and Z? I think foolish not to use that resource, especially with how much wisdom that they've accumulated over the years.
And I would say that with our relationship in particular, like, I appreciate the fact that I can talk to my parents about our relationship. I can talk to her parents about our relationship. And those are resources that I can go to if I'm feeling uncertain, if I have questions, or if I just need somebody to kind of, like, give me some encouragement. Like, I can go to for those things.
But we recognize that's a unique situation.
Yeah.
That's not everybody's testimony.
Yeah, definitely. That makes sense. Well, I want to get ready to let y'all go because I know it's getting late. But I guess one last question, since it's Valentine's Day weekend coming up, like, how has it been trying to find romance in the midst of COVID? Do y'all have plans for Valentine's Day weekend? Like,
well,
I feel like, I don't know. I feel like romance happens with that naturally. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like with us, at least, like, we've been stuck in a house together since we got married. Like, we've been quarantining since we got married. And there have been times where we have, you know, planned to have date nights and we do specific things. But honestly, some of the most romantic moments we've had is just being in the moment together. And so that's what we plan on doing. We plan on spending time together, maybe not like watch a movie or something, but We let the romance come naturally.
I love that. Okay, last thing is there any sort of wisdom or advice that you would give to anybody watching this who, you know, maybe is a few stages behind, not behind, but like earlier in their life, they're not necessarily in that relationship yet, but they desire to be in a committed relationship that will lead to marriage. Maybe they're Black, they're Christian, they're looking for something like what y'all have. And I don't know, is there anything that you would say to them? Especially because people be feeling like it's hopeless. Like, is there, not only is there a Black person out there that matches what I'm looking for, a person that loves God, like all these different things, and like, it can just seem like, does that even exist? And I don't know, any encouragement or advice or?